And thank you for joining us to launch this year's theme, which is democratic resilience. Why choose the word resilience? Well, the term has different meanings in different contexts, social, psychological, ecological, but the concept always involves two critical qualities: elasticity and evolution. The sociologist Michel Lamont described social resilience as the capacity to absorb disturbance and reorganize while undergoing change to retain the same function, structure, and identity. In other words, to be resilient is not to survive in the same form as before. It implies modification, to adapt and thrive in new circumstances and be better able to respond to future shocks. When the Nobel laureate Amartya Sen was asked a quarter century ago to name the most important development of the 20th century, he did not hesitate to say it was the rise of democracy as the preeminently acceptable form of governance. Yet, that is a fragile legacy. After the third democratic wave crested in the 1990s, bringing millions a step forward, the first decades of this century foretold millions more taking two steps back. Half of 167 countries registered a meaningful decline in their democratic index score in the last decade. And the number of countries classified as democracies fell from 79 in 2006 to 71 today. The share of the world's population living in a democracy is shrinking, and that's not merely a function of demographic trends. Democratic backsliding, or de-democratization, is a concern that has grown in tandem with political polarization, rising economic inequalities, the erosion of political parties, the fragmentation of our media landscape. Now, democracy's perennial concern with its own well-being is well known. As Michael Ignatieff put it, democratic self-rule is an unending argument about what democracy is, end quote. Moreover, we know constitutional democracies to be a work in progress, and written on parchment, not etched in stone, subject to amendment and interpretation. And that's part of the gradual democratization that has extended the rule of law, not just to more territories, but to more citizens inside those territories. But history has repeatedly shown that rights can also falter. In the USA, many fear the onset of a constitutional crisis, given the extraordinary ambitions of the White House to wield its power over other branches of government and civil society. Where you stand depends in part on where you are situated politically. According to Bright Line Watch, a scholarly group, the partisan gap in rating the quality of US democracy is at its largest in a decade. Republicans' faith in US democracy reached its low point in January of 2021, whereas the low point for Democrats' faith in American democracy is right now. You would find similarly bifurcated judgments of institutional performance in Turkey or Tunisia or other highly polarized societies before and after major electoral realignments. But yet, even if some of today's worries belong to the cut and thrust of political alternation, this is much more than a partisan divide between electoral winners and losers. It does not seem like mere taboos are being broken. We can see with our own eyes a rise in political violence, strident partisanship, a fraying sense of unity, and, as has taken place elsewhere, an assertive national government is probing the defenses of its civil society, testing how far personalized rule can reach into broadcasting boardrooms and university curricula. This struggle for preeminence raises fundamental questions about checks and balances and about popular sovereignty. Must the executive spend what the legislature has appropriated? When may the president overrule governors or replace independent agency heads? The Supreme Court will answer these and more questions related to the balance of powers, which may or may not settle the matter, since, like other institutions, the court too suffers from decreasing legitimacy. But the judiciary is just one potential source of resilience. It is easy to despair, but it is also easy to lose historical perspective, which brings me back to our initial premise and set of questions. How do societies make their way through challenging circumstances and recover stability? How do voters and civil society groups confront strategies to divide them and overcome collective action dilemmas? How will our democracies adapt and improve their functioning? At the Clough Center this year, our students and fellows and affiliates are exploring this metaphor of democratic resilience. They've begun to meet in seminars and to prepare articles for our spring journal. One essay will come from a legal scholar, Andres Mosquera, called Proving Plato Wrong, the Conditional Resilience of Modern Democracies. A theologian, Brandon, will contribute on democratic resilience and global Christianity. From a literature PhD, we will read about media and democratic resilience in the American Revolution. A philosophy student is writing about universities as bastions of democratic resilience. And in the spring, a delegation from the center will visit Bogota, Colombia, to research the sources of democratic resilience there. So in addition to acknowledging the contributions of Chuck and Gloria Clough for creating the Clough Center, allow me to also express my thanks to Jim Keenan and to Eric Owens and their program on global ethics and social trust for their support of our fall programming. You can find our last event featuring a discussion of US politics on our website. And please note on your calendars that our next event will be held on November 6th, covering the quest for democracy in North Africa with former Prime Minister Youssef Chahed of Tunisia. Today, our attention goes to several other regions of the globe across a lengthy time span. And we have 4 experts here to guide us in our exploration. They will speak 2 at a time, in each case followed by a brief Q&A, and we've asked them to keep their remarks to around 15 minutes, and I'll ask you that you please remain seated during the changeover from one panel to the next. So if I could invite up the first 2 panelists,